was a time when Dominic Thiem looked like a guy who might actually break through Federer, Nadal and Djokovic. He had the fitness, the shot making and the grit on clay, and just enough firepower on hard courts to be a threat everywhere. He beat each of them at least once, took out Federer in a Masters final, pushed Nadal at Roland Garros, and even had the nerve to go 5 sets with Djokovic in a Grand Slam final. He climbed to world number 3 and won the US Open, and looked like he was ready to take the battle. But in what felt like a blink, he disappeared from that conversation entirely. He stopped making second weeks at slams, his ranking crashed outside the top 300, he didn't retire, but he wasn't really in the spotlight either. So what happened? How does someone go from winning Grand Slams to barely qualifying for them in less than 2 years? Dominic Thiem came out of Austria with a game that felt old school and futuristic at the same time. He had a one-handed backhand that exploded with spin and pace, but he backed it up with brutal physical endurance and a mental game that really cracked under pressure. He trained for hours, more than the juniors, and in his early career, he was already being called one of the hardest workers on tour. 2015 was a turning point because he won 4 ATP titles, all of them were on clay, including one in front of home ground in Vienna. That year, he finished inside the top 20, and even though his wins weren't always flashy, there was a sense that he was already quietly building something big. By 2016, he had broken into the top 10 and made the semi-finals at Roland Garros, barely losing to Novak Djokovic. He wasn't just out grinding weaker opponents, he was starting to take down serious names like Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. And the thing that stood out was that he never stopped playing. Some players would pick their spots, skip events to manage their bodies, but Thiem played everything, week after week, tournament after tournament. Played over 80 matches in 2016 alone. He qualified for the ATP finals and became a regular second week threat at slams. But still, people wondered whether it was all just the mileage coming back to bite him. For me, watching back on Dominic's 2019 season, it felt like all the pieces Dominic Thiem had been working for in years had finally been put in place. He had always been seen as one of the fittest and most disciplined players on tour, but there was still a sense he could reach a new height about his career. He was always close, always in the mix, but he wasn't quite at the top. He never reached the top 1 or 2 places in the ATP Tour, but he was always around the 7th or 8th position. Then he made a change that shifted everything. He brought in an Olympic gold medalist who didn't just tweak Thiem's game, but he rewired it. He pushed him to be braver, to take the ball earlier and to shorten rallies that used to drag on for more than 20 shots. Thiem's old game had been built on grinding down opponents, but now he was stepping in and taking control, especially on hard courts where time isn't a luxury you have. And almost immediately the results started rolling in. He beat Roger Federer in Indian Wells final, in a match that went deep into the 3rd set, a title that's just below Grand Slams. He collected 5 trophies in a single season, and at Roland Garros, he fought through Novak Djokovic in a semi-final that stretched across 2 rain-soaked days. It was extremely exhausting for him, it was chaotic, but he still came through, only to run into Rafael Nadal in the final again. Although he lost, but unlike past years, the gap was closing much quicker. Then came the 2019 ATP Finals. This time, Thiem wasn't just beating the legends in early rounds, but he was taking out both Federer and Djokovic back to back, playing tennis so fearlessly it felt like he was finally breaking into the rare air the only best live in. But in 2020 was when things truly reached a boiling point, because in January he reached his first Australian Open final and went toe-to-toe with Djokovic for 5 grueling sets. He didn't win, but everyone who was watching thought he was getting closer and closer to those top 3 seeds. Later that year, the breakthrough arrived because at the US Open, he was 2 sets down to Zverev in the final, playing tight, looking off his game, but instead of folding, clawed his way back set by set, until he dragged the match into the 5th set tiebreak. The tennis wasn't perfect, both players were nervous, but Thiem held firm, and when it mattered most, sealing his first Grand Slam title. At 27 years old, ranked world number 3, this year was supposed to be the start of Thiem's ongoing reign. Despite all of his previous progress, 2021 completely ruined his momentum. He arrived at the Australian Open as one of the clear favourites. The draw looked good, his form looked solid, but in the 4th round against Grigor Dimitrov, something seemed off. After taking the first set, his game collapsed. He looked drained, his body language was flat, he lost the next 3 sets without a fight, and the questions started. After the match, Thiem admitted that winning the US Open had left him feeling empty, that the thing he spent his whole life chasing, that single moment of holding a Grand Slam trophy, hadn't given him the hunger he wanted. Instead, it left him feeling unmotivated, searching for something that wasn't even there. But the mental side wasn't even half the story. In June, during a match in Mallorca, he hit a simple forehand and felt something wrong in his wrist. No drama, no screaming, just a weird, sharp, alarming pain. Tests revealed a tear in his tendon of his right wrist, a serious injury for any player, but for someone with a one-handed backhand like Thiem, it was potentially career-changing. The rest of the season was wiped out. No Wimbledon, no Olympics, no US Open. Each time he tried to return, his wrist would just flare up again. Months went by without a single competitive point played, and while fans waited, the tour moved on. The danger with a wrist injury isn't just the pain, it's what it does to your timing, your confidence, and your ability to hit the ball with the same conviction. Even when the injury heals, your muscle memory can take months, even years to come back, and sometimes it never fully does. And then, by early 2022, Dominic Thiem had become almost invisible on the tennis mat. His comeback started with losses, not 1 or 2, but 10 straight defeats, most of them to players ranked outside the top 100. And remember, this guy beat Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal in his prime. So losing to players out of the top 100, fans seemed so incredibly distraught. His ranking fell so fast he needed wildcards just to get into ATP tournaments. Eventually, he stepped back into challenger events, the same circuit he had left behind years earlier. It was a humbling return to the grind of small tournaments, but what hurt more than the results was the way his game looked. His backhand, which was once the most feared in tennis, just wasn't the same. Balls that used to pierce through the court now floated short or sprayed completely wide. He admitted that he didn't even trust it anymore, and when you don't trust one stroke, the doubt spreads to the rest of your entire game. Meanwhile, Carlos Alcaraz, Holger Rune, and Jannik Sinner all rising with aggressive tennis that Thiem himself had once brought to the tour. The sport wasn't waiting for him to catch up, instead it just left him behind. But still, Thiem refused to vanish quietly. Through 2022 and into 23, he kept working, changing coaches, tweaking his techniques, trying to rebuild his confidence one match at a time. There were brief moments where it looked like Dominic Thiem had become his old self, but the problem was consistency. One week he'd push an elite player to the edge, the next he'd lose in straight sets to someone ranked far below him. It wasn't even the effort, no one questioned that, but it was execution. The forehand didn't have the same power, his backhand wavered under pressure, and mentally, you could see the hesitation at key moments. In tennis, the margins are so razor thin, a half step slow, a split second of doubt, and your entire match is gone. And for Thiem, even as the fire still burned, the gap between his best tennis and everyday tennis seemed just a bit too wide to close. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It would mean so much if you liked and subscribed so I can keep making videos like this.